Imagine you are, well, right in the middle of our Ramadi.
Oh, man.
The heat is just stifling. The radios are, crackling with all these conflicting reports. Friendly units are moving unpredictably all over the place.
Right. Pure chaos.
Exactly. And you have exactly 5 seconds to calculate the trajectory for a massive artillery strike. I mean, when most of us picture field artillery, we just think of the raw physics of that moment, right?
It feels like an engineering problem.
Yes. You get the coordinates, you do the math, and you fire. It seems totally binary.
But it's not.
No, not at all. Because when you step back from that gun line and into the command tent, that mathematical certainty is completely entangled with, honestly, the most unpredictable variable on Earth, which is the human mind.
Which basically turns a math problem into the absolute definition of a complex system.
Yeah.
I mean, managing the most lethal machinery imaginable is entirely dependent on the psychological resilience, the split-second decision-making, and just the overall emotional stability of the people operating it under extreme duress.
It's wild to think about. And, well, welcome to the deep dive. Whether you are a soldier serving right now in the 65th Field Artillery Brigade or just someone who's, fascinated by high-level military leadership, we are dedicating our time today to getting to know your new commander.
Lieutenant Colonel Jeremy Williams.
That's right. We're looking at a leader who really has to balance the kinetic power of America's thunder with the surprisingly sophisticated understanding of human psychology. Okay. Let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We aren't going to just read off a military resume today. To understand where a commander intends to take a brigade, you kind of have to understand the fires that forged him in the first place.
Right, because you don't just wake up one day and take command of an artillery brigade.
Definitely not.
It is a really slow, grinding progression. And the specific path Lieutenant Colonel Williams took is really revealing, mostly because it didn't actually start with a commission.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He actually began as an enlisted soldier in the Utah Army National Guard back in 1993.
Wow, 1993.
Yeah, putting in over a decade before he finally earned a direct appointment as a field artillery officer in 2004.
I mean, that enlisted background changes everything, doesn't it?
Oh, entirely.
It's kind of like an aerospace engineer who spent 10 years, turning wrenches as a flight line mechanic.
That's a great analogy.
You're right, because you design the systems differently when you know what it physically feels like to fix them in the freezing rain.
Exactly.
Like when you've been the junior soldier pulling security at 2 a.m. or doing those endless maintenance checks on a howitzer, you understand that orders from a command post don't just, magically execute themselves.
No, they require sweat, fatigue, and a huge physical toll from the people actually on the line. What that does is builds this foundational empathy. You really understand the friction of war at the ground level. But what's fascinating here is how he combined that ground-level grit with some seriously high-level academic theory.
Yeah, his academic background is wild.
It is. He's a National Security Fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School, which is huge. But beyond that, he holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and a Master of Social Work.
Wait, I have to pause there because those 2 degrees, psychology and social work, they seem completely at odds with the guy calling in artillery strikes in a combat zone.
They really do on paper.
I mean, you think of social work and you think of community support, not tactical warfare. How do those disciplines even live in the same brain?
It seems so counterintuitive until you realize that combat is, at its core, fundamentally a human endeavor.
Right.
Just think about his deployments. He served as a platoon leader and a fire direction officer in our Ramadi during Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Heavy stuff.
Very heavy. And later he was a company commander in Baghdad during Operation New Dawn.
Okay, so he's seen a lot.
Exactly. And in those highly volatile environments, a unit's survival doesn't just depend on whether the guns mechanically work.
Right, of course.
It depends on whether the team is mentally fraying. So a background in social work and psychology gives a commander the actual tools to read human breaking points.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, to understand family readiness back home and to properly map out team dynamics under stress.
So he's essentially analyzing the mental logistics of his troops just as closely as the ammunition logistics.
Yes, that is perfectly put. He views emotional intelligence as a core component of actual combat power.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because if trust is broken or if your soldiers are just completely paralyzed by stress, your unit is combat ineffective. It really doesn't matter how advanced your weapons are.
And he's also operated far beyond just the tactical dirt of a forward operating base.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, he's highly decorated. He holds the Bronze Star with an oak leaf cluster, the Combat Action Badge, and he was inducted into the Honorable Order of St. Barbara.
Which is a big deal in the artillery world.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But he's also served as the J-33 Current Operations Branch Chief at U.S. Northern Command. Which, for anyone listening who might be unfamiliar, that means he was part of the team actively watching the radar and managing real-time operations for the defense of the entire North American continent.
It's massive scope.
Huge. And add to that his role as a theater security cooperation lead in the UAE, which is essentially military diplomacy, right? Building relationships and training with allied nations.
Yeah, he's really seen the full spectrum of warfare. I mean, all the way from a single artillery round hitting a specific target in Baghdad up to continental defense and international diplomacy.
That's a huge range.
And all of that experience funnels directly into his core philosophy of command.
Right, the 4 Ps.
Yes. Lieutenant Colonel Williams operates on a framework that divides leadership into 4 main domains: people, process, perception, and projection.
Okay. People, process, perception, and projection.
Exactly. But instead of just viewing these as a simple checklist, he approaches every single one of them as this constant balancing act between the internal mind of the leader and the external environment of the brigade.
Let's dive into the mechanics of that, maybe starting with perception. Because how a leader perceives reality is huge. If your perception is flawed, your decisions are pretty much guaranteed to fail.
Absolutely.
So internally, he emphasizes humility and constantly questioning your own assumptions. But externally, he talks about creating shared understanding.
Right.
And he relies heavily on this concept from historian Daniel Boorstin. The quote is, "The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge."
And in combat, the illusion of knowledge is incredibly lethal.
How so?
Well, if a commander looks at a map and thinks, I know exactly where the enemy is, they just stop looking for contrary evidence.
Oh, a confirmation bias.
Exactly. They filter out the warnings. So Lieutenant Colonel Williams knows that to fight that illusion of knowledge, a commander has to actively cultivate a culture where dissent is actually valued.
Okay, but military structures are famous for strict hierarchy, right?
Really true.
So how does a brigade commander actually foster dissent without just completely undermining their own authority?
By demanding that ideas compete. It requires setting up an environment where, say, a junior intelligence analyst can look at the brigade commander and say, "Sir, your assumption about this enemy movement is wrong."
Wow, just directly like that.
Yes, and they have to be able to do it without any fear of retribution. He actually uses a mindset straight from basketball coach Mike Krzyzewski.
Coach K, really?
Yeah. The idea is you don't get better by pretending you're already great.
I love that.
So honest after-action reviews, brutal self-assessment, and valuing the truth over rank, that is how you prevent the illusion of knowledge from taking root in a tactical operations center.
That requires incredible internal security from a leader.
It really does.
And I can see how that flows directly into how he handles his people, which is another one of those 4 Ps. He states flat out that people are the core of combat power.
Right.
And we see that internal-external dynamic play out again here. Internally, the leader has to master their own emotional discipline. Like, he references Admiral William McRaven's philosophy: if you think you're too big for the little things, you're too small for the big things.
That's such a great quote.
It is. And then externally, he focuses on managing what he calls the 5 core concerns.
Right, which are appreciation, autonomy, affiliation, status, and role.
Right.
It's actually a framework that's often used in high-stakes negotiations,
Mm-hmm.
but he applies it directly to leading soldiers.
Okay, I actually want to push back on one of those really quick. Autonomy?
Oh yeah, go for it.
I totally understand appreciation and role, like obviously making a soldier feel valued and giving them a clear job. But how do you give a soldier autonomy when their job is literally to follow incredibly strict, highly regulated orders to load and fire a massive explosive weapon?
It's a vital question, and it's a really common misconception. In the military, autonomy doesn't mean just doing whatever you want.
Right, that would be a disaster.
Total disaster.
Yeah.
It's really about how the orders are given. It's the difference between micromanagement and what they call commander's intent.
Okay, explain that a bit.
Well, a micromanaging leader tells a soldier exactly how to do every single step of a task, which totally kills initiative. Autonomy means a commander gives you the why and the what.
Like, we need this done by this time.
Exactly, like we need to suppress this enemy position by 0400 to protect the infantry advance. That's the what and the why. And then they trust you to figure out the how.
I see.
When a leader gives you that trust, your sense of ownership just skyrockets. It connects back to a quote he lives by from General Theodore Roosevelt: "Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care."
Yeah, that's a classic.
Managing those 5 core concerns is essentially how a commander proves they care.
That makes total sense. You build the trust before you actually need to spend it.
Precisely.
But, I mean, even with ultimate trust, warfare is just pure chaos. Which brings us to how he views the process pillar, right? Systems.
Right.
Internally, he demands disciplined routines and the deliberate study of doctrine. And externally, it's about transparent decision-making.
Yeah.
But honestly, if you're so bogged down in process and structured reflection, don't you kind of lose the agility you need when a battlefield is rapidly changing?
Well, only if your process is a bureaucratic obstacle rather than a trained reflex.
Interesting distinction.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Lieutenant Colonel Williams frames this by quoting Aristotle: "Excellence is not an act, but a habit."
Okay.
And he pairs that with James Clear's concept from Atomic Habits: "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems."
Wait, so it's kind of like a jazz musician.
Exactly.
You can't just walk onto stage and improvise this brilliant solo if you don't even know how to play the saxophone.
Right, you just make noise.
Yeah, you have to relentlessly, obsessively master the scales and the music theory in practice first. That repetitive process builds the system.
Yes.
Then, when you're actually on stage or, on the battlefield, and something completely unexpected happens, your hands just know exactly what to do. You can improvise because the baseline is entirely automatic.
That is the perfect way to understand it. Process isn't about slowing down to think. It's about building systems so robust that you don't have to think about the basics when the pressure hits.
Wow.
If a brigade's maintenance systems, their personnel readiness, and their digital proficiencies are totally dialed in through rigorous daily habits, then what happens when the enemy jams your radios?
You don't panic.
Right. The unit doesn't freeze. They just fall back on those hardened systems. They know what to do because the process is quite literally in their bones.
Which naturally leads to his final focal point, projection. Basically how a leader's internal character manifests externally.
Yes.
This is where those combat tours in Ramadi and Baghdad really seem to show their influence. He grounds his actions in character and humility, but externally, he lives by 3 words from General James Mattis: calm is contagious.
It's so true. When a battle plan falls apart, every single soldier in that command post is going to look directly at the commander.
Yeah, they're looking for cues.
Exactly. If the commander is frantic, the room instantly becomes frantic. Panic spreads like a virus. But if the commander projects steady, quiet confidence, even if they are internally terrified, that steadiness ripples through the entire formation.
That is powerful.
It is. And he pairs that physical presence with moral presence, quoting General Norman Schwarzkopf: "If you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters."
I mean, those psychological principles, navigating perception, trusting people, building systems, and projecting calm, those are amazing for an individual leader.
Absolutely.
But, a philosophy is really just theory until it meets the reality of modern combat.
Very true.
So Lieutenant Colonel Williams is taking command of the 65th Field Artillery Brigade at a time when warfare is just fundamentally transforming. So what does this all mean? How does he translate that individual mindset into a vision for an entire brigade facing a rapidly modernizing enemy?
Well, he essentially scales those internal disciplines up to the brigade level. And he is very clear-eyed about the daunting environment they operate in today.
It's not the same fight as a decade ago.
Not at all. We are moving away from the counterinsurgency fights of the last 20 years, and we're having to prepare for large-scale combat operations, or LSQO.
Right.
That means preparing to fight a massive, highly advanced, peer military.
He uses some pretty intense terminology to describe this future. Like, he talks about multi-domain kill webs, contested logistics, and the absolute need to survive peer counterfire.
Yeah, it's a lot.
For the everyday soldier in the brigade, what do those shifts actually mean for how they train and fight? Let's take kill webs first. What is that?
This raises an important question, because the terminology can get dense. In the past, artillery functioned on what we called a kill chain.
A chain?
It was a very linear progression. A forward scout sees a target, radios the command post calculates the data, sends it down to the guns, and the guns fire.
Very step-by-step.
Exactly. But a kill web means that linear chain is totally gone. Everything is interconnected digitally across multiple domains. So a satellite in space, a cyber operator, an electronic warfare aircraft, a drone swarm, and maybe a special forces team might all be feeding target data simultaneously into the brigade's network.
That sounds overwhelming.
It is. And the brigade has to compress that web, meaning they have to process that massive amount of data and fire faster than the enemy's network can react to them.
Okay, and what about contested logistics? Because I imagine that changes the reality of just, getting basic supplies.
Drastically. For decades, we could largely assume that food, fuel, and heavy artillery ammunition would just arrive at the front lines without too much trouble.
Right, the supply lines were relatively safe.
Exactly. But in a fight against a peer adversary, the enemy will actively use their own long-range drones and missiles to blow up our supply convoys miles and miles behind the front line.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, logistics aren't a guarantee anymore. They are a daily fight.
Which makes surviving peer counterfire arguably the most immediate threat. The enemy has radar and artillery networks just as sophisticated as ours, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
The reality of modern artillery is that hiding is almost impossible now.
Really? Impossible.
Pretty much. The second your howitzer fires, or even the second your radio emits a strong signal, the enemy's electronic warfare sensors and radar calculate exactly where you are. And within minutes, their artillery is firing back at your position.
So it's basically shoot and scoot. You fire your mission and you immediately cack up and move or you don't survive.
Exactly. Which is exactly why Lieutenant Colonel Williams's focus on process at the brigade level is so critical.
Right, the systems have to be flawless.
Yes. He intends to implement systems that allow the brigade to fight dispersed. You can no longer just mass all your forces, your tents, and your vehicles in one giant forward operating base.
Because that just makes you one giant target for a precision missile.
Right. The brigade has to be scattered, highly mobile, communicating seamlessly across hidden networks, and capable of remaining totally lethal even when the enemy cuts off your GPS or jams your communications.
To operate in an environment that complex, he says the brigade needs to build leaders who are literate across all domains, not just artillery, but space, cyber, electronic warfare.
Yeah, the whole spectrum.
Because the future of the 65th Field Artillery Brigade isn't just about having the biggest guns anymore. It's about outthinking and outpacing adversaries in an environment where your electronic signatures are quite literally a matter of life and death.
Yes. He expects the brigade to anticipate what he calls the deep fight.
The deep fight.
Engaging enemy targets far, far behind the front lines. And doing that while maintaining total shared understanding with joint and interagency partners. He wants a unit that doesn't just look at the map of their immediate surroundings, but understands the entire theater of war.
And he ties all of this modernization right back to the rich heritage of the 65th Field Artillery Brigade. They are known as America's Thunder.
Such a great name.
It really is. And he sums up his command vision in this guiding mantra. We build people, we build leaders, we win fights, America's Thunder.
You know, the order of that mantra tells you everything you need to know about his philosophy.
Yeah, the people come first.
Exactly. First, we build people. The human being, their resilience, their family, their emotional intelligence comes first.
Right.
Then we build leaders. We give those resilient people the systems, the autonomy, and the doctrine to actually guide others. And only then, because that foundation is so strong, do we win fights.
It really brings everything full circle back to that psychology and social work background we talked about earlier.
It does.
He knows you cannot optimize a machine without optimizing the mind operating it. So let's look ahead for a minute. Lieutenant Colonel Williams outlines his FY30 end state, basically what he wants the brigade to look like by the year 2030.
Right. He envisions a highly lethal, modern, disciplined force. A brigade that is fully capable of integrating across all those complex domains in large-scale combat operations. But the cornerstone of that vision is that this modern force absolutely must be led by composed, technical experts who are trusted stewards of the military profession.
Which means, if you are a listener currently serving in the 65th, the takeaway here is incredibly clear. Your new commander values your humanity just as highly as your tactical proficiency.
Completely.
He requires absolute excellence on the gun line and in the digital network, but he deeply understands that excellence is fueled by trust, cohesion, and emotional discipline.
He is asking his brigade to master both the math of the trajectory and the mind of the soldier. And honestly, that is a challenge that requires daily, relentless effort.
It really is. Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over today, whether you are wearing a uniform, leading a civilian team, or really just managing your own life.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Colonel Williams operates on the belief that calm is contagious and that under pressure, we inevitably fall to the level of our systems. So look at your own routines. What is one system you can build today? One disciplined habit you can establish right now that will hold steady when the pressure hits, the chaos starts, and the radios go silent.
Because the time to build the system is long before you actually need it.
A profound challenge to leave us on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mindset and mission of Lieutenant Colonel Jeremy Williams. Take care, and we'll catch you next time.